She was the one person who saw Marilyn up close without the cameras, without the lights, without the layers of performance the world mistook for personality. Before the directors, before the publicists, before the husbands and the headlines, there was the makeup chair. And sitting in that chair, beneath the soft glow of bulbs circling the mirror, Marilyn Monroe allowed herself to be unmasked in ways no one else ever witnessed. Her makeup artist, Alan "Whitey" Snyder, had worked with her since the beginning. He knew the curve of her eyelash line better than most men knew their wives' faces. He knew the exact shade of red that made her lips iconic. He knew how to soften her fatigue and blur the shadows of nights spent awake with thoughts she never shared. But more than anything, he knew when something wasn't right. And in the weeks before she died, something was wrong. Not wrong in the way gossip magazines described her. Not hysteria. Not chaos. Something quieter. More dangerous. A stillness beneath the surface, the kind that belongs to someone who has grown too tired to cry. He first noticed it one morning when she showed up unusually early, sitting in the makeup chair before he even entered the room. She wasn't humming like she usually did. She wasn't flipping through a script or rehearsing lines under her breath. She was staring at her own reflection as though trying to convince herself she was real. "Rough night?" he asked gently. She didn't answer at first. Then she blinked very slowly and said, "Do you ever feel like you're fading, Whitey?" He froze. Marilyn never asked questions like that. Not out loud. Not even to him. "You're not fading," he said firmly. "You're exhausted. That's all." She gave him a smile so faint it barely moved her lips. "Sometimes I think I'm disappearing right in front of everyone, and no one notices." He set down his tools and knelt beside her, trying to meet her eyes. "I notice." But she looked away. Over the next several days, the signs grew clearer. Her hands trembled when she held a cigarette. Her breathing hitched before scenes she had performed a dozen times flawlessly. She flinched at sudden noises, as though expecting something, or someone, to appear behind her. She wasn't sleeping. She wasn't eating. And worst of all, she wasn't pretending anymore. One afternoon, while he was blending powder along her jawline, she spoke in a whisper that made him stop mid-stroke. "Whitey, if anything ever happens to me, promise me something." He set the brush down slowly. "Don't talk like that. Please," she insisted, her eyes glossy but unwavering. "Promise me you'll make me look beautiful. I don't want them seeing me any other way." His stomach twisted. "Nothing is going to happen to you." But she continued as though she hadn't heard him. "You've always made me look like the woman the world thinks I am. Promise me you won't let them take that away." He swallowed hard. "I promise." "But Marilyn." She closed her eyes, ending the conversation. He tried to warn people. He warned her agent, her publicist, a producer she trusted, even a doctor who brushed him off with impatient hands. He told them she was changing, shrinking, losing something essential. He told them she needed rest, care, compassion, not deadlines, not pressure, not threats disguised as concern. But no one listened. "She's dramatic. She's emotional. She's just tired. She's manipulating you. She's Marilyn. She'll be fine." Everyone had an explanation. No one had understanding. The last conversation he had with her haunts him to this day. He was brushing her hair, smoothing it back into soft curls, when he noticed her staring at the wall again, blank, distant. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. She blinked herself back into the moment. "Nothing. Doesn't look like nothing." She hesitated. Then she whispered, "I'm tired of being everyone's dream. I just want to be someone's person." He stopped brushing. "You are." She looked at him with a sadness he couldn't bear. "No, Whitey. I'm not." 2 days later, she was gone. Whitey was one of the first people they called. When he walked into the room and saw her, his knees almost buckled. Not because she looked peaceful, she didn't, but because he recognized the expression on her face. It was the one she had tried to hide from him for weeks. The one he had tried to warn everyone about. He kept his promise. He did her makeup one last time, though tears blurred his vision and his hands shook so violently he had to stop twice to steady himself. He took extra care with her lashes. He softened the tension around her mouth. He chose the lipstick she always called her Lucky Red. When he finished, he whispered the same words he used to tell her before she walked on set. "There you go, baby. You're ready." Years later, when he was old and asked what he remembered most about her, he didn't mention the glamour, the fame, the legacy. He mentioned the warning. "I told them something was wrong," he said quietly. But they didn't listen. Nobody listened. They all loved Marilyn Monroe, but very few loved her. And for the rest of his life, he carried the weight of that truth. The last person who tried to save her was the one the world never thought to ask. In the days that followed her death, Whitey became a ghost in his own home. He avoided phone calls, ignored reporters, kept the curtains drawn. The world was erupting with headlines, sensational theories, ruthless speculation, recycled stories whispered as fact. Everyone wanted to own a piece of Marilyn's tragedy. Everyone wanted to speak for her. But the one man who had heard her breaking in real time couldn't speak at all. He sat alone in his kitchen, staring at the makeup case she had given him years earlier. It still smelled faintly of her perfume, light, powdery, unforgettable. He opened it slowly, running his fingers over the brushes, the lipsticks, the compacts he had used to sculpt the most photographed face in the world. He whispered to the empty room, "I should have done more." But what haunted him most wasn't the guilt. It was the memory of the last thing she ever said to him. It had been just 12 hours before her death, late evening, the studio lot mostly empty. She was leaving earlier than expected, wrapped in a white coat, her hair pinned back loosely, her eyes unusually soft. She stopped beside him as he packed up his kit. "Whitey." He looked up. "Yeah, baby." She hesitated, something fragile flickering in her expression. "Do you think people would still love me if I stopped trying so hard?" He smiled at her, gentle and genuine. "They don't love you because you try hard. They love you because you're you." She held his gaze a moment longer, as if trying to decide whether she believed him. But then she nodded, gave a small, tired smile, and walked away. He watched her go, unaware it would be the last time he saw her alive. After her death, he replayed that moment again and again, his mind twisting it into endless versions. Ones where he ran after her, where he asked her what she really meant, where he convinced her not to go home alone. But reality never changed. She walked away, and he let her. The morning after she died, he arrived at her house before most people. The police were still there, the air thick with a grief he had never felt before. When he stepped into her bedroom, the world tilted. She looked small, too small, as if the room was built for someone larger than life, and she no longer fit the myth they forced her into. Her hair was tousled, her face pale, her lips slightly parted. She did not look like Marilyn Monroe. She looked like a woman who had been tired for far too long. Whitey stood frozen, unable to breathe. He approached her slowly, as if afraid that the floor might collapse beneath him. He knelt beside the bed and took her hand in his. It was cold, not icy, but cold enough to tell him he was too late. "Baby," he whispered, choking on the word, "I'm here." A detective cleared his throat behind him. "Mr. Snyder, we understand you were close to Miss Monroe." He didn't answer. He couldn't. The detective continued, flipping through a small notebook. "We know she requested something from you. A promise." Whitey nodded numbly. He couldn't form the words. "We'll need you to fulfill it." The weight of the request crushed him. He knew what they meant. Everyone knew. The promise she had asked for weeks before. Asterisk, "Make me look beautiful." Asterisk. Whitey's hands shook as he opened his kit. Every brush felt heavier than it should. He took his time, pausing after every movement, as though afraid he might break her if he touched her too quickly. He curled her lashes the way she liked. He softened her brows just a little. He blended a warm tint into her cheeks to give her the glow she always wore so gracefully. He chose the soft red lipstick, the same shade he used when she wanted to feel strong. The room was silent except for the faint tapping of makeup containers. At one point, Whitey stopped and pressed his forehead against the back of his hand, unable to continue. A paramedic stepped forward to offer help, but Whitey shook his head. "No," he whispered. "She trusted me. She trusted me." He inhaled deeply, steadied himself, and finished. When he finally stepped back, he whispered the line he always said before she walked on set. "There you go, baby. You're ready." This time, his voice broke entirely. For years afterward, Whitey rarely spoke publicly about her. But when he did, his voice held the same unwavering ache. "I warned them," he would say quietly. "I told them she wasn't okay. I told them she needed help. But the truth is, they never wanted to hear anything that wasn't convenient." And then came the sentence that revealed everything. She didn't die because she was weak. She died because she carried too much alone. Whitey lived the rest of his life carrying a grief he never fully set down. Not guilt, not entirely, but sorrow for a woman the world adored and misjudged in equal measure. And every year on her birthday, He visited her grave with a single white rose, the flower she once said made her feel like a woman worth loving. Standing there, he would whisper to the marble, "I saw you, baby. I always saw you." He wasn't prepared for the last warning he tried to give, because by then, no one around Marilyn believed she needed protection. They believed she needed managing, controlling, directing. Everyone had an opinion about her. Almost no one had concern for her. Except him. Whitey remembered the final week with a clarity that bordered on obsession. Every conversation, every gesture, every look in her eyes replayed itself in his mind endlessly, refusing to fade. He could still see the way she sat in the makeup chair that last Friday, twisting a tissue between her fingers like a nervous child. Her usual chatter was gone. Her spark dulled. Her smile, when it appeared at all, felt detached, as though she had borrowed it from someone else. He tried again to get someone to pay attention. He cornered her agent in the hallway outside her dressing room. "She's not well," he said firmly. "She needs real rest." The agent shrugged. "She needs discipline. She's costing people money." Whitey clenched his jaw. "She's spiraling." "She's dramatic," the agent corrected. "She'll be fine. She always is." The producer wasn't any better. "She'll bounce back," he insisted with a dismissive wave. "She's an emotional girl. You know how she is." Whitey felt something inside him bruise. That word, *girl*, reduced Marilyn to a caricature. A child. A commodity. Never a woman with breaking points. Then he tried the director. "She's not sleeping," Whitey said. "She's not eating. And she looks like she's waiting for something terrible to happen." The director didn't even look up from his notes. "If she wants to keep her job, she needs to pull herself together." Whitey stared at him. "Did you hear anything I just said?" "Yes," the director replied, annoyed. "She's emotional. She'll get over it. Now stop coddling her." Whitey walked away before the anger inside him spilled over. But the worst moment came when he spoke to the doctor assigned by the studio. A man who viewed Marilyn not as a patient, but as a problem to be solved quickly and quietly. "She needs help," Whitey insisted. "She's slipping into something dark." The doctor glanced through her chart without interest. "She's sensitive. She's dramatic. She'll stabilize." Whitey stepped closer. "I'm telling you, she's in trouble." The doctor sighed impatiently. "You're overreacting." Whitey's voice sharpened. "You're not reacting enough." But the doctor simply walked away. No one listened. No one heard him. Everyone believed she would bounce back because Marilyn Monroe always did. Her pain had become their expectation. Her resilience had become their excuse. That Friday night, she left the studio early again. She kissed Whitey on the cheek before getting into her car, a gesture she hadn't done in years. Something in it felt final. Too gentle. Too grateful. Too much like goodbye. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" he asked, startled. "For taking care of me." He didn't know how to respond. The driver closed the door before he could find words, and the car pulled away, leaving him with a chill he couldn't shake. When the news came 2 days later, he already knew the truth before anyone said it out loud. He knew because the warning signs he had shouted into the void finally swallowed her whole. In the aftermath, he sat down with the studio executives, the same men who had ignored him, and told them exactly what he thought. "This wasn't unavoidable," he said quietly. "This wasn't fate. You didn't lose Marilyn Monroe. You wore her down. But they didn't want truth. They wanted closure. They wanted control." "Mr. Snyder," one executive said with an icy calm, "we all did what we could." Whitey stared at him, disbelief turning to fury. "No," he replied. I did what I could. You did what suited you." He left the room stunned by their indifference, but not surprised. Hollywood was a machine, and Marilyn Monroe had been one of its brightest, most profitable gears. When a gear breaks, the machine does not mourn. It simply replaces it. Years turned into decades, and Whitey's warning became its own ghost, haunting the story of Marilyn's final days. People asked him about her beauty, her routines, her iconic looks. But fewer asked about her loneliness. Fewer still asked about the fear he saw in her eyes. But one day, late in his life, a young reporter asked him what he wished the world understood about Marilyn Monroe. Whitey didn't hesitate. "She wasn't fragile," he said. "She was exhausted. There's a difference." He looked down at his hands, aged, trembling, still remembering the weight of her face beneath his fingertips. "And I warned them," he whispered. "God help me. I warned all of them." Then he lifted his gaze with a final truth that chilled the room. The tragedy wasn't that no one could save her. The tragedy was that no one even tried. And in that single sentence, the world finally understood. The last person who saw Marilyn clearly wasn't a director or a lover or a doctor. It was the man who stood inches from her face every morning and recognized the moment her light began to dim.